Welcome to episode 31 of Shane Talks 99, July 28th, 1999. I promise you, this is going to be a shorter episode. I know I said the exact same thing in the last episode, but like last episode, I still had like three movies to talk about. This time, one Wednesday release on July 28th, 1999. And as an employee back in 1999 at Clearwater, I don't remember this many Wednesday releases, but I've still got a couple of more coming up this summer. So apparently there was just a lot of Wednesday releases back then that I loved my job so much that I wasn't paying attention to what day things were coming out on. I was just watching them and working and loved my life back then. So everything kind of blurred together, and we have another Wednesday release, July 28th, 1999. Saw the release of a blah shark movie. I'm like, I don't really hate this movie. Like, I can admit that it's a bad movie, but like, it's not a good movie in any way. But like, it's like a wild ride, and so like, I don't hate it. And what I'm talking about is Jaws 1999. Okay, look, that's not like the real title of the movie. So like that's a cheeky joke that's based on Jaws 19 being in Back to the Future Part 2, and then this being 1999, and it's a shark movie, so it's like Jaws 1999. You know, when I have to explain my jokes, they probably really aren't that funny. So I probably, anyway, the real title of this movie is Deep Blue Sea. And I think it's got kind of like a cult following now. I don't remember it being that popular back in the day. Again, I never hated it, but it's always one that I was just like, that really wasn't a very good movie. Like, but they had this bonkers cast put together that just had this terrible script. So like I don't know when or why or what happened. And like at some point, what could have been really good probably just suffered a lot of like really bad 90s script stuff that was going on. Like this movie's got its moments. Like again, it's not a super bad movie, but it's like a B movie with an A-list cast in it, and they just can't bring it up to an A movie. Like it's legit a bad B, like it's like literally almost like a slasher movie. Like this literally like it feels like the sharks in this movie are just kind of like toying with our main cast and like following them around, and like you know I it's just got so many like 90s puns and like 90s like bad jokes in it and whatnot, and like I'm sure that like you know I don't know. The dialogue just does it. Like it's not a good script. And so like but like it's a script that you would expect from the 90s. Like I said, like the bad puns, the bad dialogue, the like one-liners and things like that. Like they've got Michael Rappaport, I'll mention him in a little bit. Like they've got him in the movie to try to bring some comedy because like that's what 90s movies did. Even in like, action slasher horror type things, they had a guy that was trying to be funny for the whole movie. So like full disclosure, what I'm about to talk about, I am going to spoil and ruin a movie that is 25 years old. If that's not your jam, if you haven't seen this movie, if you don't want to know who dies in this movie, probably should turn this off right now because, again, you've had 25 years to watch it. If I think you really cared about it, I feel like you would have watched it already. So I'm going to say some stuff that's definitely flat out spoilery. Before we get to all that, let's talk about the fact that this film had a great director. Like this film was directed by Rennie Harlan, like a legit good 90s director. Like this dude did Die Hard 2, he did Cliffhanger, he did Cutthroat Island, he did The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is literally one of the best action movies. Like it's easily in my top 10 of action movies of all time. Like, but then he directed Deep Blue Sea. And then things just started going downhill. Like, and he's not done like he hasn't done terrible movies, but he's done bad movies. He's done very blah and mediocre films. Like when you look at the rest of his stuff, like he did like the LL Cool J worked with him again in like 2002 for a movie called Mindhunter that had a great premise. Again, another bad script that just couldn't make the movie good. So let's talk about the cast in this movie. Headlining this flick is 1999 Wing Commanders star Saffron Burrows, who, like, I hate to say this, like, I remember back in 1999 being extremely attracted to Saffron Burrows. I used to think that she was gorgeous. I've rewatched two of her movies now, Wing Commander and this one. I just don't find her the same level of attractive as I did 25 years ago. So I don't know what happened with that. Like she's still a fine actress and whatnot. I'm not attracted to her the way that I remember being attracted to her. But like what I do enjoy about her character in this movie is like as being the main heroine. Well, like so that's the other thing. Like she's the heroine, like she's the main female lead in this movie, but she's also kind of like the bad guy. She's kind of like the John Hammond of this movie. Like she's the one that literally like everything that happens in this movie is her fault. But through the majority of the movie, like she's with the good guys and like she's running around and escaping stuff and like I enjoy the fact that it gets almost to the very end of the movie. Like we're in the last 5 minutes of the movie and she sacrifices herself. Like she sees that the shark's about to get away. The three of them that are left are too far away to be able to stop it. So she cuts her hand, jumps in the water. She becomes the bait for the shark so it can come back. So it's close enough to get shot. And like, I appreciate the fact that they took one of the main characters and made her sacrifice herself. And again, you can argue whether she's the good guy or the bad guy in the movie, because again, everything that happens in this movie, like, is her fault. Like, none of it would have happened if she didn't do what she did. So, like, I'm I applaud the script for going in that direction, and I thought it was a really smart choice for a really bad movie. Our male hero of this movie is played in 1999's Magnolia, which comes out in like December if I remember right. But that's Thomas Jane, who later would be known as Frank Castle, the Punisher. So he is our male lead in this movie. You know what? Actually, now that I think about it, like I probably could have called him like the Thin Red Lines Thomas Jane, because like the Thin Red Line came out in December, like on Christmas Day in 1998. So it was still playing in theaters for a while into 1990. It was playing in theaters when I was hired in 1999 at Clearwater, which I got hired on January 2nd of 1999. So that's why I love 1999 so much, because I literally worked almost every day that almost every movie in 1999 was released. So, I mean, like basically every movie that was released, I was working because nothing came out that first weekend. But anyway, so Thomas Jane also in a Thin Red Line, the Thin Red Line, which was in theaters in 1999, also just didn't really get released then. So anyway, he plays our main male lead in this movie. He's very aggressive. He tries to kill things. He's our big, he's our Alan Grant of this movie. He's the one that we're following, who's showing everybody what to do. He's the smart guy. He knows sharks. He knows what he's doing. He's got a dark past, a checkered past. He did things that he doesn't want to talk about, like Thomas Jane, decent, really can't carry the movie, but the movie really couldn't be carried by anybody, to be honest. He tried, he did a good job, that's fine. Our trio of heroes, as it turns out at the end of the movie, is played by 1999's star of Into Deep and Any Given Sunday, and that would be LL Cool J. We'll talk about both of those movies. I think one's next month in August, the other one's in December, also, I think. Um, but like in a twist, for I compared this to a slasher movie earlier, like a horror movie where like the shark is the killer. Like our black dude in this movie lives through the whole movie. He survives. He does not die in this. He's not the first to die. He doesn't die at any point. He survives. So I give the script props for that. Definitely doing something that was out of the norm. But like he spends the majority of this movie solo. Like he's the chef, and like it's him and his bird for the majority of this movie in the kitchen cooking and talking shit to each other. And then the bird gets eaten. And spoilers, the bird gets eaten, and then like he kind of just wanders around until he meets up with everybody else. So like I don't know, truth be told, like the bird's death is probably the one that affects me the most in this movie. Like, I mean, don't really care about any of the other, male human deaths in this movie at all, but whatever. Another big name in this movie, we have another connection to Jurassic Park, now that I think about it, also was one of the stars of 1999's The Phantom Menace, and that would be Mr. Samuel L. Jackson himself, who literally has one of the greatest deaths in all of cinema history. And I say greatest with like quotation marks, because like it's probably one of the dumbest deaths I've ever seen on screen in cinema, but it gets talked about a lot because Mace Windu himself is in the middle of giving this Oscar-worthy speech about this previous avalanche that his character had found himself in, and how like there was like 8 of them that survived, but by the time there was like 10 of them that survived this avalanche, but by the time they were found, there was only 8 of them. And we told everybody that the elements are what killed our two, other people, but what really happened is like we turned on each other, and like they just kind of leave it really ambiguous. And I so dig that. I think that speech is really well done, and like how he's explaining all this stuff that happened, and you're just like, man, that is a movie I want to see. I want to see Samuel L. Jackson in the Alps, like, dealing with like some, Lord of the Flies type shit. But and like I mean, I'm not mad that we don't get more. Like I think it's a very well done thing for his character. But in the middle to end of this speech, a shark literally defies the laws of physics by jumping forward, grabbing Samuel L. Jackson to eat him, and then magically moving backwards back into the water in a motion that I just can't actually justify in any way. It looks stupid. It looks like very bad CGI, and it doesn't play very well. Yes, very shock moment, very oh no, Mace Windu just died like type moment, but still looks absolutely terrible and like just wow, like I can't believe that was Pat. Anyway, we've also got Stellan Skarsgård in this movie, who did not do anything else in 1999. He gets his arm bit off in this movie, and it's again one of the worst sequences because like just the way that it's cut together, you see the bad CGI. You see an okay animatronic shark. Like the animatronic shark is fine for the most part. Actually, it's fine for the most part, except in this sequence and the way things get cut together. Because like shark comes out of the water, and there's like a super close up of his arm getting bit, and you can tell it's like definitely like this cheap, shark at that moment. Which the wider shots didn't make it look so cheap, but then like it coming out of the water, you can tell is like CGI, and then like it like does this close up of biting him, and you can just be like, oh, that's like it's not even closing its mouth, like it's just like and then it goes back into the water and some more really bad CGI, and then you've got Stellan Skarsgård like flopping around and like they do the thing where like they don't really show us his arm missing, like his arm is like flopping around off screen, but there's just a bunch of blood in that area. So like it's the Hitchcock, like I'm not going to show you everything, but that's so that we didn't have to film him without an arm. But it's whatever. And then like he gets like a double death kind of thing because he gets his arm bit and they're trying to like airlift him out of the facility and some stuff snaps and he falls down into the water and the shark takes him and a shark crashes a helicopter because I mean a shark is obviously smart enough to crash a helicopter, of course, but like so we've got all that. Then he gets to die again when he's underwater, and his body gets thrown against this glass, and apparently that's strong enough to break some underwater glass. And the sharks were smart enough to use him to break this glass so they can flood the facility. And it's I told you the script's not that great. It's pretty dumb. Finally, we got one of our lesser known actors who appears in this film and dies. But like, I can wrap up by talk about the guy I've already mentioned that was only put in here for comedic relief. He's supposed to be like the super smart guy. He's like, I mean, he's like the comedic version of Ian Malcolm. Like Ian Malcolm was like ironically funny. Like he just said and did a lot of funny stuff without trying to be funny. Like Michael Rappaport's character is like literally trying to be funny. He's like, I'm smart. I can say smart things, but I'm also going to show some one-line zingers at you, and I'm funny. And it's he's the smart guy asshole character that's in every movie like this, and like it's just really hard to take him seriously, especially because like in 1999, he was in the middle of season five's guest arc that he did on Friends. So he's Michael Rappaport. He's hard to see him as anything else, and he's not very good in this movie, and he ends up getting eaten too, and I don't even remember how he dies, but like oh my God, how long have I been talking about this? I said I was going to make this short. Okay, one last thing to address. One last thing I want to talk about with this movie is parts of this movie were shot at the same facility in Mexico that was built for Titanic, which came out in 97, was filmed in 96. This was filmed in 98, so it was the first thing that like 2 years after Titanic was shot there. And like tons of stuff has been shot there, but this was like it was Titanic, and then the next thing they shot there was this movie. So like I just think that's cool. Like, I mean, you really can't honestly tell, but like they were able to build sets that would have been able to be like submerged into this giant tank that they've got there. And so it's like a giant tank that's also an infinity pool that's looking over the ocean. So like you can get shots that make it just look like you're part of that ocean and that it goes on forever, which they use for this movie, but it's all like a controlled pool that you can do stuff. So they had like part of this set that would like be on top of the water or submerged in the water, and you'd still have that background. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Like, did they need to be filmed in the same place as Titanic? Obviously not. But like, well, okay, like okay, so I lied. So I lied. One more thing to talk about. Like this movie somehow made money. Like I don't completely get it, but like from what I see online, like the budget was around $60 million, which okay. I don't know where this $60 million went because it wasn't in the script, it wasn't in the CGI. It must have been this A-list cast that they put together that didn't deserve such a shitty script. But anyway, $60 million movie. made $70 million in the United States, made $90 million worldwide for a grand total of 160. So this movie was profit, like $100 million in profit. And I don't understand. Or, you know what? Now that I'm talking about profit in the movie and like it being a profitable movie, I have one last thing to talk about. So this movie, which was profitable, I can't believe it took them almost 20 years to get a sequel. But in 2018, 19 years later, they got the first sequel, Deep Blue Sea 2, blah, blah, blah. And then the 2 years after that, much more like Hollywood, we got Deep Blue Sea 3 in 2020. So, like, two sequels to this movie almost 20 years later, which I know is like the big thing now. Top Gun, Twisters, like, Ghostbusters, huge gaps in sequels aren't like uncommon anymore. But like this is Deep Blue Sea. If anything, like this should have been like a cash grab back in the early 2000s to churn out a bunch of these like they did with Saw movies. Like just, oh, here's another shark movie, we're just gonna call it Deep Blue Sea. But yeah, like I don't know if some new producer got the rights to the movie or something, and like they ended up, you know, making the sequel 20 years later or whatnot. I haven't seen either one of them, so I can't comment on them, but I don't think I ever will, but I don't know. So anyway, there's my talk about Deep Blue Sea and everything that I have to say about that. Got a Friday release coming up in 2 days in 1999. That's June the 30th, when we will talk about the movie Runaway Bride, Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. So I'll see you back in 2 days.